My name is Dan Kornhauser.
My name is Bobby Hunt.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Shoot the J. Shoot it! Woo! We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm excited. There's a lot going on in the NBA these days. We're going to talk John Morant. We're going to talk Knicks, Nets, MVPs, top rookies. We're going to do all of it. We're going to go all around the NBA as we do every week. So, Bob, let's start right at the top. Let's talk about John Morant. Let's talk about the Grizzlies. Josh coming off a 52-point game. I think he had 52 points, 7 assists in a win. And, I mean, he did it all. He was shooting lights out. He was soaring through the air. He ended someone's life, and Jakob Poeltl's life. I'm pretty sure that was a murder on television. John Morant should probably lay low for a while. He's probably wanted for murder. I saw him kill a guy with a trident.
Yeah, he came just shy of doing that. He just banged it on him. And if you haven't seen it,
there were horses. There was a man on fire, and I'm pretty sure I saw John Morant kill a guy with a trident.
Yeah, he definitely banged it on Poeltl. Could have ended his career. I mean, I don't know if he'll rebound from that. He, of course, will. He'll be fine, but he got completely posterized. Everyone needs to see it if they haven't already. John Morant dunk. That's all you need to put in there. It'll pop up. Well, yeah, that clip was going viral, of course, immediately after it happened yesterday. And I mean, where he took off from was just ridiculous. It was definitely outside the paint, and he committed to it right as he started dribbling toward the paint. He's like, "Yep, I'm going up with it. I don't care that there's a 7-footer in my way," and he slammed it home. And what's funny is that might not even be the best play that he made in the game, because at the end of the first half, I don't know if you saw it, but basically there was
a beater.
The baseline from out of bounds. There's only like 1 second left on the clock. They heave it down to the other end of the court. He catches it like 15 feet away from the basket along the baseline and quickly just gets his hands on it, pushes it up, and made the shot. It was unbelievable. So 2 unbelievable highlight reel plays by one of the young superstars in this league. And I was saying it to you earlier today that I think this is him really arriving now. Of course, the NBA fans, people like us that follow day to day, deep in there, hardcore fans, play fantasy basketball. Yeah, of course we knew John Morant was a star, but I think these last 2 performances, I think one of them was on a national stage, him going for, I think, 46 a couple days ago in the previous game, 52 last night, having these highlight reel plays, and the Grizzlies being good shows that he's fully arrived, and he's on that superstar path right now. And unfortunately, the Knicks weren't able to draft him, but it is kind of playing out almost like that 07 draft where you had Greg Oden go number 1, and he had tons of injury problems and couldn't stay on the court, and then you had one of the all-time greats in Kevin Durant go number 2. Obviously, still a lot more time to play out, but Zion Williamson's career is looking threatening at the moment, and John Morant's just taking off to another level.
We'll get back to Zion in a hot second, because I wanted to talk about him last week, but we just didn't. It just slipped my mind. We were going in on other things, more important things. But I do want to talk about Zion a little bit too after this, since you brought him up. But with Ja, I mean, listen, as you said, dude, we know who this man is. We know what this guy is capable of. We know he's been going in all year. Injuries be damned. He's one of the up-and-coming, rising, like you said, superstars in the league. The league needs players like this. You know, with the Russell Westbrooks of the world getting older at the position, with Damian Lillard being hurt, with Chris Paul being old and now injured and out for the rest of the regular season minimum. You know, there's a lot of guards that were at the top of the league that are, you know, for one reason or another, this season at least, not up there as they should be at this point. And, I mean, Ja is sliding right in. The Grizzlies look elite. He looks elite. The Grizzlies look like a team that can really surprise in the second half of the season. And Ja is unstoppable when he's on. He had 46 points against the Bulls, went off. He just had 52 against San Antonio. Just ridiculous. And they have a couple of other games this week as well. They're at Boston, which is tough. Boston, if not for the Grizzlies, Boston is probably one of the better teams thus in the last month and a half of the season. But they're at Boston. They play against Orlando at home, and then they're at Houston. So Orlando and Houston are those games I was talking about. And Bob, over the next 3 games, 3 Ja Morant 360 layups. Over under 3 over the next 3 games.
Now, what kind of odds am I getting?
You're getting these odds. But
Yeah, I don't know. That's it's a tough random question. I guess I'll go. Plus, not too many people are watching the Grizzlies, even with how good they are. They don't have a ton of national games. But right now, they're on the heels of the Warriors, which is crazy to think of. Forget about the Warriors even chasing the Suns. They got to hold off the Grizzlies at this point. They're only 1 game separates them. Grizzlies are 3 seed at 43-20. So they're hot. They look good. I know we talked about them a little bit last week as to whether they're real contenders or not. I certainly think they can be dangerous in the West. I still shy away from them being a serious title contender per se. But when you have a superstar like Ja Morant, he's playing at this level. As long as he's healthy, he can carry that team. And they have good players otherwise, too, like Jaren Jackson Jr., who's finally had a full season of playing. Steven Adams has been a good fit with that team after they traded Valanciunas. Guy like Desmond Bane has stepped up tremendously. Yep. He's been a huge component to their success. So it's a young, aggressive team that's going to be one of those teams to really deal with for years to come, and it's all led by Ja Morant.
I mean, Ja Morant is the driver, the conductor of this Memphis Grizzlies train. But don't be confused, man. This is actually a really good team. They're top 6 in net rating. They're top 10 on both ends of the floor. They have the second best defense in the league since the turn of the new year behind Boston. And I mean, these are not coincidences. But I need to ask you this about teams like the Grizzlies, the Cavs, whoever else at the top that we didn't really expect, aside from like the Phillies and the Heat and the Warriors and the Suns and so on and so forth. But particularly with like the Grizzlies and the Cavs, and in this case, particularly with the Grizzlies, I know you said you may not trust them as a title contender quite yet, but how far off do you think they are at this point? Do you think this team is truly ascending as they appear to be? Or do you think this is just going to be another Knicks situation where the other teams don't really care because it's the regular season? This is a young, athletic, upstart team led by a young point guard, led by a young power forward in Jackson Jr., etc. Is this a team ascending, or is this Knicks 2.0?
They're definitely ascending. I don't know if they'll be able to be a top 3 seed again, say, next year. It's very tough. You have the Utahs of the world. We'll see what Dallas maybe does in the offseason to help Luka Doncic. But they do have staying power. They do have a young core. I think they just need that other veteran piece that can really help them score, maybe defend as well. And players should want to go there. And I think the biggest thing is what we started off talking about is Ja Morant. It's different from Knicks where, yeah, we know Julius Randle, even though as Knicks fans, or at least me in particular, was happy last year with them being a 4 seed and making the playoffs. We all knew that Julius Randle can't be a lead guy on a championship team. He maybe can't even be a number 2 on an elite team. Ja Morant, while still only 20 or 21, has the ability to lead a team, or at the very least be an outstanding number 2. But right now, he's the number 1 guy in the Grizzlies. They're 43-20. They're doing better than what the Knicks were doing at this point last year. So I think they definitely are a team on the rise. They're going to be a team to reckon with so long as Morant's in the lineup. And they have the other pieces. It's just who can they bring in the offseason that can maybe help them get to that next level.
Before we continue, I always forget to do this at the beginning, but we are brought to you by betting.net. It's your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites. Head on over to betting.net. Now, back to ball. Let's shift away from Memphis for a hot second and one of the rising stars in Ja Morant. Let's talk about someone who should be in that position, a player who was taken ahead of him, who had more hype than any NBA prospect that I can personally remember besides LeBron James. And that, of course, we already spoke about him, is Zion Williamson. Now, coming into the league, we knew Zion had a particular set of skills that he acquired over the years that help him hunt down men like Sorry, I just had a Liam Neeson moment. Sorry. He has a special set of skills. He could score. He could play defense on multiple positions. And he's a burly, big guy. Now, there was talk when he came out that his size would be something that's held against him, that would inevitably hold him back, that he's too big and too muscly for his own good. Well, those things are coming to fruition. Those concerns are here. He's got foot issues, foot injuries, setbacks. He's apparently fat now, 300 pounds and shit, looking like a young Chuck Barkley out there. And not in a good way, looking like Chuck, just looking fat. And it sucks, man, because he went number one for a reason. We know the talent is there. I know Greg was talking about it the other day in our group chat that, he saw this coming. He was never that high on Zion. But listen, man, when this kid's healthy, he averages 20 plus a game. He can, like I said, defend all 5 positions. He's as athletic as anyone in the NBA right now, or anyone in recent memory. He has it all. He's got the star appeal. He plays hard. Where do you stand right now with Zion, Bob? Because for me, it's just I'm at the point where it's like that relationship that you lost. That it's like, man, it's unfortunate that it had to go that way. And you just think about it, it's like, man, what could have been? That's what I think about with Zion. It's like, damn, man, he's so friggin' good. What could be? Where do you stand?
Well, it's BS from Greg because he was definitely thinking Zion could be special. And he thought Morant would be too, but it was both. We all thought these two are elite players. Whoever gets them is going to be very happy. And Zion did have a great season last year. He had 27 and 7 as averages. His PER, his player efficiency rating, was ridiculous. It was almost 30. He's not a very good defender. I don't know if I'd go so far to say he can do it all. I don't think he can really defend some of the elite centers in the league or really defend a point guard. But the ability athletically is certainly there when he's on the court to cut, man, shooting guards, small forwards, power forwards, and be able to play 30 minutes a game. But yes, he needs to take care of his body better. He can't have 284 pounds on a 6'6" frame. It's just not going to work. He needs to cut probably 20 pounds. And it is scary when a guy's getting foot injuries this often. He may need a second surgery on that foot.
Well, when I say he could play defense on all 5 positions, I don't mean necessarily that he can do it at an elite level. He just wouldn't be a liability. He could do a switch off on a pick and roll on a guard off of a 3 or a 4, or hell, even a small ball 5. He could do the Draymond light and just rotate and not be a liability. May not be elite, but he won't be a liability. That's where I meant more with the defense on all 5.
And none of those players from that draft are finished products yet. Right now, John Morant looks like the best pick from there, but he's not an elite defender himself either. So they all have room for improvement. They're all only 21 at this point, so still a lot of room to grow. But yes, it is very concerning with Zion, and not only the conditioning, but yes, also the fact that he seems to have somewhat of a surly personality. We heard a week or so ago when J.J. Redick put him on blast on ESPN, former teammate of Zion's, saying that he should have reached out to C.J. McCollum when they had traded for him. Zion is still a leader on that team, or at least looked upon to be that type of guy, because we know he can play. We know if he's healthy, he's going to be out there 30 minutes a game, starting every game, and going to be relied upon as the former number 1 overall pick to produce and be a central focal point for their offense and the team as a whole. So you worry about that. He's also training in Portland, so he's not with the team. I think he's at some Nike training center in Portland. Some guys do rehab on their own, and sometimes that's fine and all well and good, but usually you see it from a guy who's more of a veteran and been in the league for a while. So there's a number of concerns. I don't think it's going to end well with New Orleans. I think at some point we are going to see him traded. I just don't know when that's going to be. Obviously, the trade deadline passed, but will it happen in the offseason? I don't know. And also, what kind of value are they really going to get back for him if he doesn't return at all this year? They're going to have to take 75 cents on the dollar, if that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we're going to want to keep an eye on as things move forward, both overall for the talent of the league and for such an exciting player, and because we're Knicks fans and there's a strong possibility he gets traded to the Knicks. So That's just hashtag something the Knicks would do. I can see it. But since you did bring up a potential trade with Zion, I'm going to stick with that thought process, that bubble that you went there with the trades. And I'm going to talk about a guy who was actually traded. I want to jump out to Philly right now. Harden's in Philadelphia. We knew that. Ben Simmons in BK. Awesome. Everything's going there. We'll get to BK in a hot second. But going to Philadelphia, we had discussed, you, me, Greg, in the chat about this deal. And I was very high on it compared to maybe you and Greg, or you in particular, who not so high on it. And you did say it was a good trade. You did say you made them one of the favorites to contend in the East, but you don't really like James Harden these days. And I took that personal because that's my boy. I love me some Hardon. And as much as I hate Philadelphia, they can suck it as an organization and as a city. Sorry, whoever's watching from Philly, I love y'all, but Philly sucks for sports. That aside, they have the potential MVP. They have one of the elite guards in the league, averaging the second most assists in the league, over 10 assists per game, and can drop 30 on any night if he feels like it. Why are you not as excited about this as I am? And now you have no sound.
Here we go. Hold on.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, the thing is, we both said we liked it a little more for the Nets, given what they got, and also the long-term prospects that there are. But Harden will ball out. He's still going to be a good player for them and a great second fiddle. The problem is he's just a malcontent. At some point, he's going to wear out his welcome like he did in Houston, like he did with the Nets. And I think there's also just so much more pressure now on the Sixers because he's going to want a new contract in a year or so.
That's right.
Now he has stated, I think they messed up with the paperwork and he didn't they didn't have his option picked up in time. So that would be a storyline going into the offseason. He's due $47 million next year, final year of his contract. So my point with him is, all right, yeah, he's still a great player. I don't think he's as good as he was when he was winning an MVP years ago. I don't think he can be the lead guy on a championship squad. But with Embiid, they're dangerous, no doubt about it. But if they don't win a chip this year or next, they're going to have some major decisions to make when he's 34, looking for a new contract, going to be wanting 40 to 50 million per year still, if he is still scoring 20 plus and getting his 8 or so assists and rebounds per game. So that's just the pressure that's on the Sixers. They have more of their time clock is ticking. If they don't get it done this year or next, I just don't see it happening with Embiid and Harden. So they just put themselves in much more of a pressure cooker than they needed to be. Granted, this was the only deal that could be done, so I get why they did it. I just think it's not going to wind up with a championship, and that's the ultimate goal for all these teams.
Well, the East is looking rather suspect. If Durant and Kyrie aren't going to get it done, who else is going to do it out in the East, Bob? Do you think it's still Milwaukee?
Definitely Milwaukee. I still would say the Nets are dangerous if Durant and Kyrie are healthy come playoff time. The Heat still in that mix. Again, we talked about them last week. I don't know that they're better than the Bucks, for example, but they could be a squad to be reckoned with, certainly in the playoffs. So Philly's right there in that mix with those other three teams. I think it's going to be one of those four that represents the East. But then not only, even if you get through the East, then you probably have to deal with either the Suns or the Warriors.
It's going to be a gauntlet in the playoffs for sure. Before we move forward, I want to remind you guys that your top sportsbook comparison site is betting.net. Betting.net offers extensive reviews on the best sportsbooks out there, so you don't have to. Head on over to betting.net. Now, we did mention the Brooklyn Nets, so let's stick with them, okay? Durant's going to be coming back soon. The New York City mandates are coming to an end soon, which means theoretically Kyrie will be able to play in Brooklyn. Awesome. But we still have to ponder the Ben Simmons situation because that still is present. And now Andre Drummond's hurt. And Steve Nash has COVID now. I think he's in protocols now. If it's not one thing, it's another with this team. Is this just what it's going to be for the rest of the time that Kyrie's in Brooklyn? Is it the Kyrie effect that anywhere he goes, all this fucking drama seems to follow and all this nonsense, even if it's not directly correlated to like connected to him, anything he's saying or doing, or just his presence in general. But like everything around him always seems to just collapse. Players get hurt, their relationships are ruined, coaches have issues, the team has the roller coaster concerns, and the Nets are butt right now. They can't win a game. They can't do anything right. They're not healthy. They brought in Dragic for nothing. This team's too Jekyll and Hyde for me, Bob. Are we going to see this team get consistent anytime soon, or is what it is?
It's tough to see it at this point. It's still, if Durant's there, they're very dangerous. But you're right. I mean, it seems like every turn you take, every time it seems like they get guys back and they're ready to take off, someone else gets hurt or something happens or Kyrie's in a mood. So it's always something with this team. So there's definitely some negativity that's clouding them for sure right now. And that's the problem if they play in the play-in. So I think, yeah, if Durant and Kyrie are healthy, they'll win in the play-in. But then they're a 7 or 8 seed. I'm going to have to play a team like the Heat or the Bucks or Sixers, and it's going to be a grind, a total gauntlet, as you alluded to a little bit before this segment. They have too much negativity around them. They still can be very dangerous, but something doesn't seem right. I think it would be smart if you're a betting person to favor the Bucks as champions to get it done in the East again this year. Maybe the Heat, the Sixers, if you're so inclined, definitely if they have their trio of Embiid, Harden, and Harris healthy, they look very dangerous. And then can't forget about a team like the Bulls, who you have Vucevic, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine. They're a dangerous squad. So there's just a lot of good teams in the East, and it's going to be tough for the Nets playing from behind and not having home court advantage. Even if Kyrie is available for all the games, it's still going to be tough for them.
Now, when you say tough, I'll say that's an understatement. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They're sitting at number 8 overall right now. They are 2 games behind the Raptors for 7th, and only 2 games ahead of Atlanta, 2.5 games ahead of Charlotte for the 9th and 10th spots. They need Durant back in the worst way because, as you said, there are a slew of teams that are going to be contending. The Miami Heat are red hot. They've won 4 in a row. They're 9-1 in their last 10. The Boston Celtics are beyond scorching hot. They're 8-2 in their last 10. And in their last month, I think they've won a majority of their games. I'd have to look back at the stats. I read something crazy about it earlier. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Oh, yeah. 16 of their last 21 games. Ridiculous. So with things like that going on in the East, and like you said, the Bucks being the Bucks, the Sixers with Harden and Embiid, maybe the best 1-2 punch in the league. The Bulls being dangerous. It's going to be ugly. Cleveland's still there. And then there's the Knicks, Bob. And then there's the Knicks. I know they're irrelevant anywhere but here, but we are in New York. We are Knicks fans. I'm wearing a jersey, okay, a Pat Chewing jersey, even though Georgetown sucks and the Knicks sucks. It's fine. 5 straight losses, 1-9 in our last 10. And just every game, a new reason to hate this team. You look disgusted. I'm disgusted. This is the team that I had expected last year. This is the team I expected coming into this year. This is what they are. This is it, Michael Jackson.
This is it, Mike Jack. Yeah. It's bad. The only bright spot is that RJ Barrett's turned it up lately since he came back. So he's been playing really well. We just hope to see more ascension from him. At this point, I think even Tom Thibodeau has given up. He's playing the young guys, which he usually doesn't do.
Crazy.
At least not young guys like Jericho Sims and Cam Reddish. We knew Cam Reddish had been buried on the bench since the trade about a month ago now. He was playing Barrett, of course. Mitchell Robinson still gets plenty of minutes. But we know this team's headed nowhere. They're 4 games out of the playoff spot, in the play-in at least, from that 10 seed. They're not going to make the play-in. I'd be shocked. And between blowing big leads and just not being able to close games when they're tight, there's just so many problems for this team. Randall's totally disgruntled and getting pissed off at the fans and the officials and getting teed up. Really, the only hope is that you see more of the young guys play. But otherwise, this team's going nowhere. They need a direction, and it's bad, especially because it doesn't seem like the front office is on the same page as the coaching staff, basically, and Tibbs in particular. What's his name? Worldwide West, I forget his exact name, but he threw him under the bus last week, knifed him in the back a little bit. There's reports that he's blaming Tibbs, which, again, it's not all Tibbs' fault. He does take some of the blame, but
someone's got to get blamed.
Yeah, exactly, and it should be everyone from ownership on down. James Dolan, granted, his state kind of hands off, but the Leon Rose experiment hasn't worked so far, especially this year. Great, they were 4 seed last year, but they brought in the wrong guys. We talked about it ad nauseum between Fournier and Kemba Walker.
Yeah.
A guy like Derrick Rose shouldn't be such an integral part of your team at this stage of his career. So there's a lot of things that they need to fix in the offseason. And, yeah, maybe Tom Thibodeau gets fired, but I don't know that they're going to be any better because of it. There's roster changes that really need to be made.
It's going to be a lot worse before it gets better because this Knicks roster is locked in. All these guys are signed to long-term deals. Burks is signed to a multi-year contract. Rose, Randall, Barrett, all the guys at the top. The only one who's Reddish. The only one who's not is pretty much Mitchell Robinson, who's a restricted free agent at the end of this year. To that end, I don't know what moves the Knicks can possibly do this offseason, but we'll get into the offseason stuff and the Knicks and all that stuff when the season comes to an end. But just for now, quick question. Is Mitch Robinson a part of this team's future moving forward at this point? Or are we best served to let him test free agency, see what offer he gets, and if we like it, we match it. If we don't, if it's like $15 million a year or something ridiculous, hard pass. Where do you stand on Mitch? Because me, I'm fine with him walking out the door at this point.
Yeah, give him a qualifying offer, see what teams maybe offer him. But I can't stand his game. He hasn't really grown much. His best season was his rookie year. He's always dealing with some kind of injury. I think he does play hard when he's in there and he cares, but that's not enough. He really hasn't grown his game. Still an awful free throw shooter. He's not an elite defender. If he was, then you'd be more inclined to keep him in the fold, but he's really not. He sometimes gets overrated because he'll have like a great performance and maybe have 4 or 5 blocks, but then he'll totally disappear in other games. Now, granted, Embiid's been doing this to everyone, but he ate his lunch the other night. I mean, he's causing everyone to have foul trouble this entire year. But against some of the premier bigs, Mitchell Robinson is not getting it done. And so, yeah, I'm definitely open to them letting him walk. I'm not trying to give him a big contract. But I still trying to keep him in the fold and develop him? Yeah, sure, but only at the right price.
Before we move on, I want to remind you guys that The Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. And betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Head on over to betting.net. Now, we're talking about teams in turmoil. So I think it's only right that we head over to the West Coast because they are, if not the most popular, one of the most popular basketball teams in the nation, regardless of where you live. And I'm talking about the LA Lakers, Bob, because they keep losing. Nothing around LeBron is looking anything close to respectable. This team is fading really, really fast. AD is fucking out. Period. Westbrook's still not quite, and Vogel still has a job. Surprisingly, I thought this guy was going to get fired months ago, but he's still kicking. Kudos to him. And now they're in the news not because they're only losing games, but because LeBron is soft as baby shit, and he is complaining about the fans heckling and talking smack to the players during the game. Now, we talked about this, I think, in detail in our group chat, and I'm not going to go into it like we did in there, but I am going to say I think he's soft. I think the NBA is soft. Yes, the fans should not be verbally abusing players. That's not what you go to the games for. You shouldn't be insulting their families or their wives or their kids or threatening anybody or spitting at them or throwing things at them or none of that stuff. You do that, you're out. Arrest these people. They're animals. They ruin it for the rest of us. But, no racial slurs, no sexist things, nothing like that is acceptable. But looking at LeBron and say, yo, bro, you fucking ass, your butt, you suck, your team is ass. I mean, you don't like it. Be better, bro. You don't want to hear it. Be good at your job. Yeah, no one's gonna talk to their crappy tax accountant and say, oh man, they're not gonna go to his office and start telling him how bad he is at short forms and doing 1099s. Dude, you suck. What am I paying you for? No. But that's why NBA players and professional sports players make millions to deal with this sort of shit. Okay. It's ugly. It's ugly in LA. I wish we could have Steve Risley on the show because he lives out on the West Coast, and I want to hear what's going on in LA. I want to hear he's got his ears to the ground there. He's a big basketball fan. He's more college basketball than NBA these days, which is great. But still, like he's in the mix out there. So I'd be curious to see what they're saying on the radio out there, what they're saying on their podcasts out there in the newspaper, shit like that. I'd be very curious to see how it's going because nationally they're getting killed.
I'm sure they're freaking out. It is time to, it's been time to panic, basically, especially once AD went down again. So maybe he'll be back in 2 to 3 weeks. But if they have any chance of doing anything in the play-in or beyond that, they absolutely need AD in the fold along with LeBron. So right now they are still in the play-in. They're still the 9th seed. They're still, I think, 2.5 games up on the Pelicans. The Pelicans just blew them out the other night. Absolutely just waxed them from pillar to post from beginning to end. And there's obviously serious doubts about what they can do if they're even going to make the playoffs at this point. They are fading fast, like you said, 3-7 in the last 10, and it's bad. I don't think Frank Vogel gets fired at this point. It's a little too late in the game to scapegoat him. They played 60 games, 22 left. It certainly could be an off-season move, no doubt about that. We could definitely see him get the axe then. But they're just not a good team right now, flat out. They've just had too many issues. Certain guys haven't fit in well. And Westbrook being number one of all those. But they are the most popular team out there. They got to be freaking out right now and thinking this team's got to get blown up. Something's got to happen. It definitely has been talk in NBA circles, especially on all the national shows. The Knicks have fallen by the wayside. They still get talked about because these are two of the premier franchises, at least in terms of fans. They just have the biggest fan bases, so of course they're going to get talked about a lot. But the Lakers are a mess. There's no doubt about it. And to speak about what LeBron said now, I don't know exactly what he's saying people said to him, but I definitely agree with you as far as if they're just taunting him about how he's playing or how the Lakers are playing, you got to deal with it. I'm sorry. Even the college players have to deal with that. That's just what comes with the territory. But also, yeah, we have seen instances of fans saying really despicable things about people's family or kids. Or racial epithets, those things can't happen. That's where I do think it crosses the line, and those type of people shouldn't be allowed to go to the games. But if it's just heckling and good old natured ribbing, even if it might be a little worse nowadays than it used to, but you got to let it slide off your back, especially when you're a vet like LeBron. You've seen and heard it all at this point.
Honestly, at this point, I think their fans just want the season to end, and they're just lucky that they're in the West because sitting at 27-33, if you were out in the East, you'd be cozied up with the Washington Wizards on the outside looking in of the playoffs. So they're lucky they're in the West where the Blazers, the Spurs, the Kings, the Thunder, and the Rockets all suck ass, and they're going to be absolutely irrelevant the rest of the way. That being said, Portland, as bad as Portland is without Lillard and without McCollum, and as bad as the Spurs are overall, both of those teams, I mean, the Blazers are only 2.5 games back. They have the same record as the Pelicans, so they're right there. And the Spurs are only, 3.5 games back of the Lakers right now. So if they don't get their act together and get their act together quick, as bad as the West is, and I personally don't think they're in real danger of missing the playoffs as long as Bron plays, they're close, man. They're close. And I mean, the West has been better than the East historically, the last few years, but they're lucky. They're lucky they're in the West because they'd be dead in the water if they're in the East.
Can you believe that Lakers championship was only a year and a half ago?
Yo, it's crazy how much shit changes in a year. But before we move on, I want to remind you guys to find the best place to bet for you. Betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. Head on over to betting.net. Now, let's move on. Let's get out of the pits of the NBA that is New York and LA right now. Let's flip the script, all right? We're heading into the stretch run of this episode, and I want to talk MVPs, and I want to talk Rookie of the Year. Let's start with rookies. All right, let's start with the rookies. Scottie Barnes, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, and then pretty much everybody else. I like Giddey, but it's pretty much those three and everybody else. Who is right now your favorite for Rookie of the Year? I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, but I want to see if your answers changed since then.
It is a tough call. I wouldn't go Cade because I think he's just missed way too much time. Pistons stink.
Cade's a beast, man.
He is a beast. I love Cade. He's going to be at some point a perennial all-star. He could be a triple-double guy easily. Giddey's also that type of player. So they definitely have very bright futures on young teams. But I can't go with Cade. It's between Mobley and Scottie Barnes. I still lean Scottie Barnes. I know we talked about it probably around January or so. That's where I would still go with Scottie Barnes. He's played pretty much every game. Mobley missed a few games here and there. Overall, not a ton. I still think it's under 10 that he's missed. And they have really similar statistics. I think they're both averaging like 14 or 15 a game, 7 or 8 rebounds. Mobley's averaging more blocks, but Barnes has more steals and assists. I don't know the percentages, to be honest. But I'd lean Scottie Barnes a little more, especially considering at the beginning of the season, Raptors didn't have Siakam for about 10 games or so, and Scottie Barnes was leaned on along with Fred VanVleet to keep that Raptors team afloat. Both squads, both the Cavs and the Raptors, are in the playoff picture right now, both in the top 7 or so, so they're in good shape there. It's definitely a close call, but for me, it would be Scottie Barnes at the moment.
Yeah, Barnes is actually averaging 14.8, 7.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists in 35 minutes per game, shooting 48.7% from the field. So it's a pretty good stat line for anybody, let alone a rookie. And then as far as Mobley goes, I can't really argue with you that those two guys are the top two. I'm going to go with Mobley, though. Evan Mobley is just one of the more complete rookies we've seen, I feel, recently. And we knew that he was one of the top players in this class. If it wasn't for Cade, Mobley probably ends up going number 1 overall. But 6'11", can play center, can play power forward, averaging 14.8, 8.2 rebounds, and 2.6 assists on 34 minutes per game and shooting 50% from the field. He's a good defender. He's athletic. I don't care that he's missing games. He's a double threat every night, averaging like 2 blocks a game. And I know how much you love Mobley, so the fact that you're going with Barnes is actually telling to me, because I know how high you're on when it comes to Mobley. But I think Mobley, not only earlier in the season, but at the end of the season, I still think he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. But Cade's not too far behind. I love Cade Cunningham. The man's going to be a monster.
It's just going to be tough because of how piss poor the Pistons are, and even Giddey has really gained a lot of momentum in the second part of the season. Not necessarily after the All-Star break, but since say January or so, he's picked up really heavily in the rookie ladder in the race. But still, barring an injury, assuming Mobley and Barnes are going to play from here on out, it's going to be one of those two guys. And yeah, I mean, it very well could be Mobley. And I think the fact that the Cavs are higher than them in the rankings will probably play a factor at the very least in that discussion.
I do want to give some love though to Franz Wagner, Wagner, whatever. Because he leads all rookies this season in most 20-point games with 14. His offense has been right. He's been pretty darn consistent. He can score at any level pretty much. He can shoot threes. He can shoot off the dribble. He gets to the rack. All these good things. His defense has been getting better, and it wasn't, not that it was terrible, but he's a complete guy. And if it wasn't for these other 3 studs at the top balling out ahead of him, I think we would be talking about him a lot more, and he would be getting more love around the country. And he's another one I know how much you liked him too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a really good rookie class, and all have bright futures. It's going to be definitely a class that we're going to remember. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Before we move on to the MVP convo, to wrap things up here, betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes, so you don't have to. Head on over to betting.net now to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. Betting.net. Now, final topic. Let's talk MVPs, Bob. This is another thing. We talked about this a few weeks ago as well, and I want to see where you stand now. I'm going to throw out some names. I'm sure you're thinking of them too, but Joker's one of them. Embiid's up there. DeMar DeRozan is up there. I think Curry is sneaking back up. And it would have been Chris Paul if he wasn't hurt, which I'm going to assume your MVP pick is one of those 4 guys, right?
Yes.
Which one is it?
It's really tough. Gun to my head, I'm going to say Joel Embiid, because they're a little higher in the rankings. These do play a factor. I know some people love stats, and stats definitely play a big factor, no doubt about that, when we're talking about these discussions. But I think there might be some voter fatigue with Joker just because he did win it last year. Outstanding season. He very well could win the back-to-back. Giannis had one, I think, back-to-back prior to Joker winning the award last year. But Joel Embiid is averaging about 5 more points per game. Now, Jokic does beat him in a lot of the other categories. I think he's averaging more rebounds, definitely more assists. His percentages are better. I think his efficiency rating is slightly higher. But Joel Embiid is also a major defensive anchor for that team. They're higher in the standings, and he's put it all together this year. He's already ascended to a superstar level status over the last few seasons, but at least this year he's been healthy, and that's been a key factor. It's always looming that Joel Embiid injury scare, of course. Even in the game Sunday against the Knicks, he went down, but luckily was able to get right back up. He stepped on Evan Fournier's foot as he drove to the basket, but he was fine. Didn't have any major injury or anything that came out of it. But assuming that it goes down to the wire and all these guys are playing, I think it's Joel Embiid's award to lose. But again, it's very close, and it's really between him and Joker. And I'd say also DeRozan, those 3. Curry's really faded. He's been struggling a lot basically in the last couple months. Of course, the Warriors are still in great positioning in the West. They still have a great record, and he's still been outstanding, of course. But just considering the level that those other 3 guys are playing at, I think it's going to be difficult for him to get back to number one where he was for most of November and December.
I'm going to surprise you, Bob. I want to surprise you. I'm going to surprise myself, even. Because despite my personal feelings about this organization and this team, and how I have said very openly in the past that whenever someone on that team is brought up, I instantly think, suck it. I'm gonna say Joker, because as good as Embiid's been, and as much as I want to hate, I'm the player hater of the year for the last couple of years running. And as much as I want to hate, I can't do it. I just can't do it. That Nuggets team is not quite right. They've been without Murray. They've been without Porter Jr. Their lineups have been super inconsistent. Guys in and out of the lineup. He's the one constant. He keeps putting up numbers. He's averaging 25.5, 13.8, and 8 assists per game. Sprinkle in a steal and a half. Shooting 80.6% from free throws. Shooting 56.7 from the field. Those are MVP numbers. And you know me, I'm not easily impressed. And when it comes to teams I don't like and players I don't like, it's even harder for me to get on board when it comes to complimenting them. But he's been going off lately. The Nuggets are winning games. And he's literally carrying this squad on his girth. And he needs to be commended for such.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player. He's one of the most efficient players ever, really, and he's just dominates in every facet of the game. The only thing that maybe isn't at that elite level is his defense, but he's still no slouch. He's still a great player, and so I respect that. But I think Embiid is the favorite at the moment, especially if Philly can be the number one seed. And with Joker, yes, I think it's definitely a big feather in his cap that you haven't had Porter Jr. Murray, which is definitely valid. But then someone could also point to the fact that for the majority of the season until they just acquired Harden, Philadelphia didn't have their second best player, the guy that they expected to be there, which was Ben Simmons. Now, Tobias Harris, very good player too, so they haven't, been hurting too much. But I think, especially if Philly can somehow get a 1 or 2 seed, which we know the Nuggets aren't going to be, I think it's Embiid's award to lose.
So Vance McCray, good buddy Vance, thanks for tuning in, bud. Vance comments on YouTube, Franz did that while Suggs, Fultz, and even Anthony were out. He needs out of Orlando. Logjam. I mean, it's a little early for to be calling for a rookie to be trying to leave town, but I like where your head's at. And Anthony, actually, when it comes to Cole Anthony, Bob, that's another guy Bob's in love with. And how's that going these days, Bob?
He still had some good games, but I think what Vance might be alluding to as well is that Wagner has shown an ability with some playmaking, basically. He's had some games where he's had 7, 8, 9 assists. Again, though, he is a rookie, and I don't think he's going to be making any demands. But these teams always that are at the bottom of the league, they just stockpile all these young, talented players, but it never comes to fruition because you need some other vets. You need good coaches. So at some point, yeah, I think some guys are going to be shipped out. Which ones they are, who knows at this point. But Cole Anthony's still been good. Maybe not as good as he was in like December, but yeah, I mean, a guy like Markelle Fultz, I've already given up on. I know he returned a couple days ago, but to me, if you're Orlando, you got to ride with guys like Cole Anthony, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, the younger guys who also haven't shown a penchant for getting hurt damn near every season.
And Vance gave us another comment. He says Embiid with a bunch of dots. After watching him and Harden, he should run away with it. I'm assuming he means Embiid running away with the MVP. And you might be right, dude. I'm not saying Embiid doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying Joker's been going hammer time. And he definitely deserves the accolade should he get it again. And then Vance with another comment, will be interesting to see how they play down the stretch with Fultz stealing minutes. And yes, that's definitely a thing to watch out for. And to see if he's going to stay healthy. Because as we know with Fultz, that's been the biggest issue of his career, aside from his broken shot, which was weird in its own. Health has been a huge concern for him from the get. So if he can stay healthy, they've got some young, talented depth and some nice young pieces. Franz, Suggs, Fultz, Anthony. What's his face? The big man, Bob.
Mo Bamba.
No, not Mo Bumba. Not Bumby.
Wendell Carter Jr.
No, the other one who's hurt. Jesus. Isaac.
No, Jonathan Isaac. Forget it.
Yes.
He's hurt all the time.
And here we go. Good old Joseph Michael. What up, Joe? He says the president is about to talk, and I'm watching you guys. I don't even watch the NBA, but anything is better than what's on TV right now. You are not wrong, sir. You are not wrong. I'd probably rather watch grass grow at this point than watch that. But thank you for tuning in, Joe. We love you. Hope you tune in for our Wednesday football pick'em NFL talk show with Mike Goodpaster and Steve Risley. We want to show some love. And yes, Vance, we were talking about Carter Jr. as well. So Orlando's got a lot of young depth. It'll be interesting to see how they divvy out those minutes. But I have to say, Bob, I think that puts a pretty bow on the show. Do you have any final thoughts or anything like that?
I actually do not. I don't have much to add.
Good.
Right now we're in the midst of, kind of the doldrums of sports. So, until we get a little closer to playoff time in the NBA, there's not much else to be said from me.
All right. So we are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. The handle is at DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. Give us a follow. Give us a like. Share. We'll follow you back. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, ideas, anything you want us to touch on during our show, send us a DM. We'll definitely bring it up. Give you a shout out on the air. And with that, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Vance, Joseph, thank you guys for your comments. Always welcome. You guys are great. For Bob Hunt, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in. MLB owners suck. Let's go Ukraine.